sorts of havoc in the United
Warbles
States.
on a lot to YouTube. ABC Radio National. Halloween.
More than 60 people died in the Caribbean.
Last day of October.
Before it hit the US. The International Federation of the Red Cross assessment
Let's just hear what
Jamaica, Cuba, and it
Cuba
says that the damage
and the
there
Caribbean
is worse than first thought. So we thought we'd go to the Caribbean and see if we can get some kind of perspective on the ground. We're joined now by Enrique J. Guevara from the IFRC. Enrique, thanks very much for your time. I understand that the IFRC is about to launch an appeal for aid, is that right?
That is correct, Wally. Thank you for having us this evening. The truth is we are putting out appeals for Cuba, Jamaica, and we'll be issuing an appeal for Haiti as well.
What sort of aid are you looking for?
What we're looking for is mostly cash donations to the appeals, also from our partner national societies, as well as external donors to help cover the funds that we need to be able to deliver this humanitarian aid to carry out recovery operations in all three of these countries that have been hit very hard by the effects
Coopers,
of
sparkling ale, malt liquor video.
It's been worst for Haiti, that Haiti was hardest hit, but what is the damage? What's been left in the wake of Hurricane Sandy that you're now having to deal with?
Actually, the figures we're looking at currently indicate that Cuba has been the most significantly hit, but I do want to stress that assessments do continue, and that we are particularly concerned for Haiti, given its high level of vulnerability, the number of people in camps.
I wonder where one has
well.
left one's
But
pipe.
I can tell you from
Hopefully it's not in there.
initial figures of Haiti are that some 6,790 people are still in shelters, and some 15,000 people have been left without houses or have had their houses significantly damaged.
I suppose with the US, the storm was hitting very densely populated areas, places like New York, and that created a problem. But I suppose with the United States, at least, you're dealing with a very big economy that even if it's struggling, might have the capacity to respond.
See, the pipe is safe. Did I tell you, this is actually the fourth Cooper's study of the afternoon.
And this is why the international community needs to come together to be able to respond to these emergencies.
So much of the attention has been on the US now and the world attention. In fact, that's really what put it into international headlines, rather than when the hurricane went through the Caribbean. Are you worried that that's going to divert the attention and aid that you need in the Caribbean away from you and towards the US?
As a neutral and impartial institution, and as the Federation of the Red Cross, which is comprised of all these national societies, we would like to communicate the message that we stand solidarily alongside all of the national societies that have been in the path of this storm, and we do not think that one emergency or one situation overrides the other or is more important than others.
No, but it's about the fact that one will be deemed more important by the public and therefore one will miss out.
Well, we hope that that does not happen, and we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about the other situations that are going on in the rest of the Caribbean, and we do hope that there will be media attention for the other operations going on and that we're able to cover the appeals that we're launching.
Just before I let you go, Enrique, what sort of money will you need? What sort of amounts are we talking about?
For the Cuban appeal that we're launching, it is 5,453,221 Swiss francs, and that will be used to assist 15,000 families.
Okay, that's a very specific number, Enrique, I've got to say.
Exactly, but what happens is we launch these appeals so that we can purchase tarpaulins, purchase zinc rooftops in the case of Jamaica and Cuba.
So that'll help 15,000 families in Cuba, but 7 million, 7.5.
To make sure that we're giving proper potable water and being able to send out
7.5 million
on health.
Households in the excited states of Norte Americano are disconnected from the grid.
All the best with your work. It's an enormous task you've got ahead of you and across the entire region. Really.
That was one hell of a big storm.
I appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today, and I'll let you get back to the work that you've got to do.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Enrique J. Guevara from the International Federation of the Red Cross speaking to us there from Panama. Here on RN Drive with Waleed Ali.
Yeah, well, I think but I would rather wax lyrical on my own authority. If that's okay, if that's acceptable. Been running for 5 minutes, huh? Yeah, okay. Now look, you got this dirty great big storm, and it smacks down, not quite perfectly aimed at New York, but at New Jersey. At New Jersey. I find that kind of hyper coincidental, because as anybody who's looked at my channel before may have probably noticed, I'm attempting to publicise a little known use of well marketed technologies. Everybody knows that lead acid batteries need to be fed electricity every day. Everybody knows that solar panels make electricity every day. Everybody knows that motor cars have lead acid batteries. But it has been conventional wisdom that a solar panel couldn't make enough electricity to make any difference to a motor car. But when I noticed that my battery on my car was never ever being fully recharged, because with a 15-minute longest regular run time, my average engine run time was only 6 minutes, and therefore I could only ever get 70% of a recharge into my battery while the engine was running. And this left my battery living 30% flat. And I've been living off second-hand throw-out batteries for 10 or 15 years. Before that, I used to buy new batteries and kill them because I didn't know what I was doing. So when I realised my car was failing to finish recharging its battery, I resisted the urge as long as possible, and finally I stuck a solar array on my car to finish recharging the battery. Because I'd already been measuring the fuel burn and recording the fuel burn, I was able to notice that there was an improvement to the fuel burn when the solar panel went on. Thus, and because I pursued with obsessive energies the concept of putting solar panels on cars and streamlining them so that they wouldn't make any extra aerodynamic drag, and my car now has a 30-watt solar panel that's fully enclosed, streamlined. Because it's enclosed, it has to be ventilated. Because it's ventilated, blah, 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 blah. It winds up that it functions as a solar thermal ramjet going up the highway on a sunny day, and it saves me 33.25% of my pre-modification fuel burn. Now 30% of that's electrical, 3.25% is because of the aerodynamic smart arsey pantsism. Can't help it. Yes, I'm an aerodynamic smarty pants. I'm possibly one of the planet's leading experts on low-speed aerodynamics. I say this because if you go on YouTube and search the movie title, 8 HP for horsepower, 8 HP, 1975, Skycraft Scout. You go and search that movie and you will see what I made my first solo in. And if you've ever flown an aeroplane that had 8 horsepower, single surface wings and 2-axis controls, then you, like me, will be able to say, I've flown something worse than the Wright Brothers Flyer. I know about low-speed aerodynamics because when I did it, there was elevators and rudder and throttle and no instruments and a bicycle chain drive, right? And I was 17 and I'm now 51. Right? Low-speed aerodynamics is my bag of tricks, you know. If I wasn't good enough, I would have died as a teenager. So yeah, you can streamline your solar panel as much as you like, and that might even make it save 3.25% in the moonlight. But you can stick your solar panel onto your vehicle with no streamlining, just bolted onto the roof rack. And what I call my minimalist disciple, he achieved about 22% fuel burn improvement. I've just got to check this damn thing and see that it's actually still recording. Yeah, yay team, it is in fact still recording. So, my whole solar panel on a motor car theory becomes capable if it'll save 32.25%, 33.25% on my car, and if, according to my measurements, the global fleet of piston engine motor vehicles has a battery that's somewhere between 10 and 60% flat, and because the flatness of the battery in percent equals the percentage of the fuel burn going to service the flat battery, to make the torque, to run the pulley, to drive the belt, to run the alternator, to feed the battery, to try and remediate the flatness, but the short engine runtime means you never get there. If you add 10% to 60%, you get 70%. Divide that by 2 is 35%. The global fleet average fuel burn being wasted at the moment because the cars don't have solar panels is 35%. At the moment, planet Earth is burning 45 million barrels of oil per day. A third of that is 15 million barrels. 15 million barrels of oil per day translates as 18.75 million tonnes of atmospheric carbon dioxide, greenhouse gas emissions, things that make the global biosphere become hotter. And when the biosphere becomes hotter, all of the homogenesis mechanisms become more extreme, more vicious, more savage. So the storms become stormier. The droughts become droughtier, the winds become windier. The hailstones grow from the size of golf balls, which were big when I was a kid, to the size of cricket balls, which are more or less common these days. And if you'll do a Google search on mega cryo meteor, right, you will discover that there's a whole bunch of people who've been smacked in their house or their car by hailstones the size of watermelons. Now, there's a thing called micrometeorology, which means that somewhere like New York, with all of its concrete and steel and glass and tarmacadam, it becomes a heat island. And because it's a heat island, you get local warming of the air mass over the top of it, so that air mass is becoming lighter than the surrounding air and it's rising, just like the air over the fire is rising. And what that means is that there's a constant inrushing at ground level of cold air to try and fill in the vacuum caused by the hot air rising. You make some due adjustment for Coriolis effect, and that's pretty much why the storms are starting to target the cities, because the cities are heat islands. And what it boils down to is that there is no possible technological fix to global warming. The only fix to global warming is to close down the industrial economy, to stop the trade. If there's no trade, there's no value in goods. If there's no value in goods, there's no economy. Once upon a time, you could have appealed to people's reason and to their philosophical beliefs and to their analytical powers. Now it's coming down to competition for energy and resources versus the planet's inability to tolerate such heat islands. Here I sit under a gum tree, living in a lawn locker for the last 18, 19 years. I've been paying rates on an endangered species sanctuary for 22 years. And I give away all of my best work. You know, when I figured out a way of safely towing hang gliders behind ultralights, and I saw that what was legal was deadly dangerous and what was safe was not legal, I wrote to the authorities and I made my methods available. You want to check that? Search aero towing Rogallos. Right? Just those two words, aero towing Rogallos, and you'll find it. That apparently saves the great full nation of Australia $31.5 million worth of uncomposted yuppies per year since 1997. That's why they pay me to sit up here under a gum tree, living in a lawn locker, thinking clever thoughts. Because the theory is that, shit man, if that silly fucking idiot up there on the hill, if he ever has another idea like that, man, we want to know about it. So they pay me to sit here. I am the fool on the hill. I'm between 15 and 150 metres vertically superior to anybody within probably 15 to 100 kilometres. There's not many people live this far up on top of the hills in this part of Australia. The watershed of the Great Dividing Range is 1.25 kilometres that away. So, when I got on YouTube, pushing SunFoils, the whole idea was that I would make 1 or 2 movies and YouTube would make it globally available, and the rest of the 7 billion would think, oh, fuck, I can put a solar panel on the roof of my motoring car. Or I can continue to waste an average of 35% of my fuel. And I figured they would just do it, because it's not rocket science, it makes really good sense, and it's easy and it's cheap. And we're nearly 4 years since I put the Mark 1 on my car. It's about 1.5 years since my daughter made a YouTube channel and stuck it on my mobile phone. I now have 610 movies on my YouTube channel, and every movie's been shot on a mobile phone and uploaded from a mobile phone. There's over 84,000 movie views on my channel and 2,200 movie views of my movie on my daughter's channel. And consistently about 20% of my movies are about SunFoils, an aerofoil which runs on sunlight. If you search SunFoil, you're going to run into over 120 movies that I've put up, plus a dozen or so movies that other people have put up about my ideas. And then you're also going to run into movies about a cricket series in Sri Lanka sponsored by a cooking oil company called SunFoils. I can't do much about them and they can't do much about me. But that's what's happening. Now, by an absolute, complete, amazing coincidence, just as I personally am the global champion guru in favour of SunFoils, there is in fact an arch anti-SunFoilist. And the arch anti-SunFoilist, the person who's made more movies than anybody else on planet Earth, saying that I'm full of shit and I'm a liar and a bullshit artist, is a man called Gary, and his last name is Mosher, and he lives in a town called Mendham in a place called New Jersey. And he reckons I'm full of shit, you know, and he's got his own personal YouTube agenda and his own personal political agenda. And I can understand where he thinks he's coming from, and I don't agree with him, but I respect his right to have those opinions, and I'd like to try and debate him on them, but he goes bananas with the ad hominem attacks, and he wails into dingbats like me, and long and the short of it is he's had me blocked for a bloody long time because we've had about 3 flame wars. And the last time we had a flame war was when he reckoned that my idea of having a solar panel on the roof of the car to fill the battery up so that you didn't have a part flat battery leaning on your alternator, sucking on the petrol tank via the step-up ratio of the belt drive. He reckoned that was utterly insane because he was comparing the amount of power the solar panel puts out to the amount of power the engine puts out. And he couldn't see how come having a 30% battery would flat battery would increase your fuel burn by 30%, or a 60% flat battery would increase your fuel burn by 60%. But the point is, he'd never paid attention to how little energy it actually takes to push a motor car around at metropolitan speeds, you know, 30 mile an hour, 50 kilometres an hour. And even highway speed, you know, 60 mile an hour, 100 kilometres an hour. It's only like 25 horsepower. If you've got the ability, with your lights on and your battery half flat and everything electrical going in the car, if you've got the ability to suck 30 horsepower out of the crankshaft in order to drive the electrical system while going up the road at only 100 kilometres an hour, and you're only going to use 25 horsepower for aerodynamics, then yeah, sure, you can actually be putting half of your fuel burn into the electrical system. And if you never drive for long enough on the clock to allow your alternator to finish charging your battery, then the battery just sits there getting flatter, waiting for next time to suck harder on your petrol tank. I could never get Gary of in Mendham to understand that. And, you know, like I'd make one movie and he'd make 5 movies, and my movie would be 15 minutes and his would be 45 minutes. And to this day, if you search my channel name, @WarblesOnALot, the first movies you run into are made by him, because he has 8,500 subscribers and he's made, you know, like a dozen or 2 dozen movies saying what a half-wit he thinks I am. And I'm trying to stop global warming, and he says I'm a dickhead. And he lives in New Jersey, and he just had Super Hurricane Frankenstorm Sandy come right directly straight over the top of his house roof. I have no idea how Gary got along. I know this time last year the poor bastard had a week off grid, right? Even though he's got a nuclear power station just down the road. They have a nuclear power station in New Jersey. I didn't know that until I heard the other day that, you know, like last night, yesterday, New Jersey's nuclear power station is considered to be safe even though it's flooded because it's sealed up and she's watertight, mate. Okay, so Gary runs his computer the size of a house on a nuclear power station just down the road. shit, mate, that's really biologically friendly and environmentally concerned. And he said I was full of shit for trying to stop or slow down global warming, reduce the atmospheric carbon emission on a daily basis by a mere 18.75 million tonnes. If only I can get the rest of the 7 billion to pay attention to a fool's advice. And let's face it, I am the fool on the hill. You know, I'm vertically superior to everybody within 15 to 75, 100 kilometres, you know. Depends on how far and in which direction you want to go from here. If the fool on the hill was not a significant figure worthy of paying attention to, do you think the Beatles would have ever sung about the fool on the hill? If it wasn't important to pay some erudite autodidactic to sit back at a distance and listen to society's emanations and attempt to come to a coherent view of what the fuck they think they're doing? If it wasn't important, the Beatles would never have sung of it. And as poorly qualified as I am, you know, a low-speed aerodynamics consultant test pilot crossed with a general nurse. You know, these are the things that I have studied well enough to become proficient at. I don't know anybody else who's better qualified than me to be the fool on the hill. It's a worry. It really is a significant worry. If I went to meetings, I'd qualify as being an alcoholic. But as my daughter says, I'm not an alcoholic. They go to meetings. Her daddy's only a drunk. But here's the thing. I'm going to make a really big prediction. In the whole of the effects of Hurricane, Superstorm, Frankenstorm, Sandy, I'll bet nobody who has a SunFoil will have been hurt. And the thing is, if they had a SunFoil on their car and their house got crushed by a falling tree and it had no grid power anyway, they would be able to take the LED or the bulb out of the parking light and with any 2-core flex pulled from anything in the house, you know, like cut the cord off the vacuum cleaner and use the 2-core flex to run the system. They could use current from their car battery to run one single bulb so they could cook and they could have one light at night time, and they could also listen to the car's radio to hear emergency bulletins, and they wouldn't have to burn any fuel, and it wouldn't be dependent on their house being connected to the grid, because the grid's going to go down. If you've got a SunFoil, not only are you going to be able to save fuel, reduce your personal emissions, save money, but if your house goes offline because the grid fails, then your car becomes a standalone solar emergency camping unit, right? And as yet, I've only been able to re-establish contact with one of my American subscribers, and I've got a bunch of them that I stay in touch with. It's just another one of those counterintuitive things, but the fool on the hill with a global megaphone has a bit of a global reach, and I get global feedback. And Kointica, he's okay, right? He hasn't lost his power yet. right? But he's had some pretty foul weather and all sorts of other things have been discombobulated by the storm. Well, he's a bloody long way from the east coast. A bloody long way from the east coast. For 8 hours, YouTube in Australia said it was doing systems maintenance, and I had no inbox, and I had fairly limited success in navigating YouTube. Even browsing videos wasn't going to work. So we're looking at 30 minutes. All I can personally say is it's going to be interesting to see whether the excited states of Norte Americano is able to hold its elections on time. So far the storm seems to have done about 50 to 75% less damage than the pre-impact hype said it was going to do. It's bad, but it ain't that bad. 30 of 50 people are known to be dead. 80 or so houses burned in New York City. Subways out of action for a week. As far as I can see, the excited states has been hurt but not crippled, and they're probably going to be able to have their elections. As long as they don't get hit by a snowstorm, you know, like in the next 5 days. If they cop a really, really decent extra vasalisation of the North Polar jet stream so that a big chunk of cold air comes down and freezes them while they're still buggered up from flooding and high wind, then they may not be able to hold their election. But who knows? With luck, the American elections will go ahead, and with even more luck, whoever it is that loses is not going to cry foul on account of the Frankenstorm super hurricane Sandy. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. To all my American subscribers, good luck, fellas. Whether you're pro-natalist or anti-natalist or atheist or comparative theologist or believer in one theology, you know, like, I hope you're all doing all right in your own little particular personal neck of the woods. Because, let's face it, you know, we're all human. So, take it easy, fellas. Ciao.